Hi everybody, and welcome back to another Magic Rambling video. I'm going to be talking about how I stopped trying to be a spiky spike and learned to embrace my Johnny Spells nature. So this is going to be a video that includes a lot of stories and talking about the player psychographics that describe the motivations behind why people build decks and how they interact with Magic. So if you like these kind of videos, please let me know with a like and a subscribe or a comment or whatever. Or if you think that I'm wrong in my estimations of how the psychographics go, let me know there too. But yeah, I don't really have a no visual aids or anything for this. Just gonna ramble into the camera, so bear with me or enjoy the dog behind me because she's adorable. But we'll start with story time because I think it's educational to start with like where I came from starting with Magic and all that. And it's just, stories are fun. So sit back, pull up a chair or whatever. I picked up Magic back when borders were white, sometimes white, and our play group thought that Hand of Death, which said destroy target non-black creature, meant that it destroyed white border cards, like any white border cards or any white border creatures. And like Drudge Skeletons was the best creature in the game because Regenerate did whatever it needed to do. And so that was middle school for me. Like 6th grade, 5th, 6th grade. And I couldn't even tell you what my motivation was back then. I do still have I guess this is the second deck I ever bought, but this is the deck box for it. This is the 7th edition 40 card, come on camera, whatever. It is a 40 card starter deck. Back when they still had the advanced beginner expert ratings on the products. But I got the 7th edition one. I had the blue one, the Blue Bomber, and the green one, the Way Wild decks back from 7th edition. And I don't still have the other boxes because I cut them apart and turned them into deck holder trays because I was a dumb idiot middle schooler. So yeah, I got rid of those when I found them when we moved into our house. I was like, why do I still have these? So I don't have them anymore. But I kept that one because it's nostalgic. I really like the art on the Sarah Advocate that's on it. But yeah, so 7th edition, Odyssey, Onslaught, Legions. So a lot of tribal stuff, kindred stuff going on. In our play group, we had the one guy who was the sliver player, and I don't know what I was doing. I remember playing like blue and white, but no idea. No clue what I was doing back there. But the first deck that I remember consciously playing was a red-blue artifacts deck that was modified from, I think, one of the Dark Steel intro decks, or starter decks. Precons. Jesus. Precons, whatever we called them back then. And the only reason I remember that is because during one after-school play session, somebody spilled a liquid, I think it was water, it may have been soda, all over the table, and it got on my cards, and it water damaged quite a few of them. So I had all these like Seat of the Synods and Great Furnaces that had water bubbling on them, and it sucked, and I was very upset. And I didn't even know that sleeves were a thing at the time, but looking back, I'm like, why wasn't I sleeving my cards? The answer is, again, because middle schoolers are stupid. So it's hard to take any formative Magic building moments from that era because like it's so long ago, and I feel like I wasn't even a conscious player. I was just buying packs and putting cards together and not understanding the mechanics. But that's where I started. I really started building Magic decks in the Lorwyn era and what I kind of refer to as the second age of Magic for me, which was during high school, specifically sophomore year through senior year. Um, so that means I missed awesome stuff like Ravnica and Kamigawa because I was taking a break from Magic. And I didn't really have anyone to play with back in the latter days of middle school in the first year of high school. Um, but I moved back to Texas, thankfully, and in high school I got to play Magic again. And if you were ever in high school before classes started in the cafeteria, and there were a bunch of nerds sitting around one of the tables playing Magic and watching anime, and one of them's got a laptop out that's covered in stickers, that was us. that was our dumb butts. But we loved it. Like it was a consistent group. Once we could drive, we were going out to F&M's in town and coming back like late in the morning, like 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock in the morning, because that's when the drafts would end. And this is all pre-Commander, even Elder Dragon Highlander. Like we weren't playing like that. We were playing Standard because that's what people played, and like that's not only we play Standard, we played best of three because again that's how Magic is best played, and that's I don't know, it's just the best way to play Magic. Best of one is a travesty. So the play group evolved as we all kind of got to know each other and our decks and everything. And one of my good friends at the time was like a super spike, like way into winning and like efficiency and like just you doing whatever you have to do to win. Like you're playing the best deck, you're making use of all the resources you have available to you at the time. And for him, and our meta at the time, that meant settling on this blue-black control deck that was pretty much built entirely off the back of Mole Drifter, Cryptic Command, and Makeshift Mannequin. So it was pretty much pure draw-go control that won off of reanimated Mole Drifters and just burying you in card advantage. It was brutal. This deck beat the crap out of anything that I brought, no matter what I brought. I tried Mono White Kithkin to go underneath it. Nope, he has Damnations. I tried Fairies. Nope, I just didn't have probably the ability to play tempo and like Fairies as they would have needed to be to beat that deck at the time. So I just had this like run during high school where nothing I did could beat this blue-black control deck. And I tried. I was on, like, it got to the point where I made an account for MTG Salvation, which was one of the original, like, Magic forums, at least original for that era. And I made an account. I was like, I need help. Like, I cannot beat this deck. And, like, what can I do? And my friend actually found the post and was responding to people too, but it was just there's only so much you can do, and with my playability at the time and cards that I had access to, there really wasn't a whole lot that could get past it. And this continued until one of my, well, I don't know favorite sets, but it's a set that is precious to me, called Eventide. And Eventide was the fourth set in the Lorwyn Shadowmoor Superblock. It is a small set built around enemy color hybrid, but it also introduced a mechanic. I guess not introduced. It premiered a mechanic called Chroma, which was first introduced in Future Sight. And Chroma is what people today would call devotion. And cards with Chroma just cared about mana pips in some way, not necessarily the ones that you had in play. And Eventide features a card called Sanity Grinding. Sanity Grinding is triple blue for sorcery, and it reveals the top 10 cards of your library, then mills an opponent equal to the number of blue pips in those cards, those top 10 cards. I don't know what got me to put sanity grinding in my deck. I really wish that I knew like what my thought process was, but I did. And it spawned my first true brewing creation, a deck that I lovingly referred to as Twin Sanity. It was a mono blue deck, which I say in quotes because of the aforementioned hybrid themes of Eventide and its preceding block Shadowmoor. There are some pretty wild definitions of what could be a monocolored card. And it was a control deck whose win con, really the only way it could win was milling the opponent out. The whole goal was to cast Sanity Grinding and then twin cast it and copy it again, or and copy it to reveal the top 20 cards and hopefully milling for a whole bunch. So this is a deck that's playing all of the five color, or not five color, the five hybrid avatars from Shadowmoor and Eventide, like Godhead of Awe, Dominus of Fealty, Overbeing of Myth. So it's like Overbeing of Myth is green blue hybrid 5 times. So you can cast it for quintuple blue or quintuple green or anything in between. But I mean, I was never casting those. I don't want to resolve those spells. Those are just +5 cards milled when I revealed them. And that's all that's all that I cared about. The deck played Dream Fracture in addition to Cryptic Commands because Dream Fracture drew me a card and drew my opponent a card, and hey, that's +1 or that's -1 card in their deck. So it's great. It's great for me. And this was also one of my first experiments with the idea of virtual card advantage, where since I don't really care about resolving the avatars like that, they're never going to be my win conditions. And the only other creatures in the deck were Mole Drifters, Wistful Selkies, which ETB'd and drawed a card, and drew a card. Jesus, drawed a card. And Plume Veils, which were, attacking removal. So I was never trying to win with damage. And I fully expected all of my creatures to either eat removal or die when they finish doing their draw a card thing. So, and with our meta, we didn't have a whole lot of creature decks, so I'm not under constant pressure from aggro decks to be able to react to them. I'm trying to exist alongside my opponent's Mole Drifters and card advantage, which gives me plenty of time, because 2/2 in the air isn't the fastest clock. And he's already drawing a bunch of cards. So I made this deck. I loved it, and it wasn't great. But it did steal some wins from my friend, and those wins felt really good. There were so many games in that cafeteria that came down to flipping the top 20 cards of my deck and counting the pips, which is like, it was super appealing for me. Like, it was something that was, up to chance, but tilted in my favor because of the way I built the deck. And eventually Alara Reborn comes along and gifts me the delightful card Mind Funeral, which shifted me into needing some black mana to actually cast it. And on the iterative process went as I kept up with Standard. And, side note, I think this is kind of one of the ideal ways to interact with Standard, and it feels wholly absent from the format as it exists right now, because a lot of Standard, from what I've seen and what I've played on Arena and whatever, which isn't a lot, but a lot of Standard just seems like it's these micro synergy packages of 1 to 2 cards that came in disparate sets, and they all just kind of do their own thing because every card is uber value all the time, no effort. So you make your deck, and most new sets aren't going to add a whole bunch to it. It's just your deck, and you play it until it rotates out of Standard, and then you're like, oh man, all my cards that I had don't do anything, and I don't have anything else to play. But like in that old version, you're constantly swapping in and you're upgrading and changing your deck, and it's shifting as new cards are added and cards leave. Um, Whatever. Side rant gone. All of this is to say that as much as I tried to classify myself as some sort of creative spike, I was deluding myself to the fact that I'm actually a Johnny. And to touch on those terms, they are what WotC, like R&D, calls psychographics, like player profiles that explain why somebody plays Magic. Spike is there to win. Spike will play the best deck. They'll optimize for corner cases, learn the rules, tight plays, tiny advantages, and the actual Spike, I don't know why I put it in quotes, whatever. The actual Spike card in Magic is, and they're all uncards, but Spikes is called Tournament Grinder because usually the people who are out there in the tournaments grinding for Pro Tour or whatever, like prestige level Magic, they're there to win, and they're gonna play whatever deck gives them the best chance at that. Their card lets them pay life in black or in Phyrexian black mana to tutor for a card from outside the game that was banned in a constructed format. I don't know. That one doesn't make any sense to me. It's the most recent of them. No, they printed Timmy. No, not Timmy. Vorthos. They printed Vorthos, so on that. But whatever, Spike. The next one, which is what I am, now that I recognize it, is Johnny/Jenny. And we play the game to express ourselves. Winning is great, but the way that you win is important to a Johnny or a Jenny. It needs to feel, or it needs to be something that feels original to us, and the card that represents this archetype, this psychographic, is called Combo Player, Johnny Combo Player. And it's like a 2/2 for 2 double blue or something like that, but it has an activated ability, 4 generic, and you just go get, it's instant speed demonic, or diabolic tutor. You just go get something from your deck and put it in your hand. No qualifiers on it, you just go do it. And we'll get to it in a little bit, but like that moniker of Combo Player, I think, is one of the reasons why I never truly, or why I was blinded to that association before. The final psychographic is Timmy or Tammy, and they are interested in the big flashy stuff. They care about the quality of their wins, and want them to be big and splashy, splashy and story worthy. Their card is called Power Gamer, and it is a green creature, 2/2 for like 2 green, that for 4 generic mana lets you put any creature from your hand onto the battlefield. So it's like sneak attack, except it doesn't die and doesn't cost any red mana. So with the benefit of hindsight and not being a stupid kid anymore, I'm very clearly a Johnny with some spike tendencies. Like I like to win, and things like optimal play patterns and understanding strategic concepts of the game, like card advantage and knowing the rules and how they apply in complex situations, has always appealed to me, and it's something that I've always focused on as part of my play, my core gameplay habits. And to me at the time, that meant that of course I was a spike. What else would I be? Little Timmy Tim Tam's never bothering to learn the rules, and Johnny Spells over there is too busy assembling a 4-card semi-infinite combo that allowed for an arbitrary number of upkeep triggers. Like that wasn't me, clearly. Like I wanted to win, and I knew the rules and how the game works. That's a spike. I'm a spike. Of course I am. But it wasn't like that. Of course I wanted to win. I just wanted to do it on my own terms. And that Combo Player moniker that the card had and that the psychographic had was almost like a red herring for me. Like to me at the time, Combo was Dragonstorm in Extended, and yeah, even that was a spike deck because it was winning. It was a good deck in Extended at the time. And my decks never felt wholly reliant on a specific combo or engine or like synergy package. They just, did their own thing. Often my decks would end up being very meta specific as I strived to answer every question the meta threw at me instead of posing a question of my own. But for one brief, glorious era of Magic, I got to be the one asking the question. And that question was, did you shuffle your deck? By the time Zendikar came out, I was a freshman in college with a budding Magic play group that I cultivated in the most cringe-inducing manner of my current self could fathom. I slapped the 5 mana symbols on a blank page, put the words, recognize these, meet me in the lobby at this time over them, and posted them in the dorm lobby. Big yikes, right? But it worked. I had a few people meet me in the lobby, got my butt handed to me by a Dragon Tyrant smashing my standard deck's face in via a proxied Sneak Attack, back when Sneak Attack was an expensive card. So I had my playgroup, and it was great. I'd already scoped out the nearest game store when I visited campus earlier that year, and I got our group together, and we started doing regular FNMs, in addition to, the more common dorm room floor brawls that we would have. The other thing that's important to this story is that there were 2 Magic stores in town. One was a hole-in-the-wall store that doubled as an anime and manga store, and the other one was pretty much all in on Magic and a little bit of board games. But nobody in my group really wanted to go to the big one because it was full of Spike tournament grinders and just a bunch of people who play Magic who are, as I may have previously established, the worst type of people. We like to go to the little store because it was closer, and even though FNMs had an entry price of $5 instead of the freebie grinder stores, it worked better for us. We had a smaller, tighter knit community. We got our participation promos for buying in, and then we had a pretty good shot at getting whatever the weekly or monthly FNM promo was at the time. And we didn't have to be there until 1 o'clock in the morning against 36 other people grinding it out. It was just us. So we've been going to this shop, and I was still playing some version of Twin Sanity. Everyone else is playing their stuff. We're getting our promos, having a good time. Zendikar comes out, and one of the greatest Magic cards of all time was printed. Archive Trap. So I was immediately in love. Like suddenly I had 3 powerful mill cards that all wanted to be twin cast. I had Sanity Grinding, Mind Funeral, and Archive Trap. I think actually Zendikar may have rotated Lorwyn Block out. I don't remember. It's hard. I don't feel like looking it up, but whatever. I had this mill deck, and straight away I threw my traps into my deck. As my friend and Magic rival quickly fell in love with the Zendikar vampires and their modernization of the old self-destructive black aggro decks of yore, stuff that used to run like Carnophage or Sangerphage or whatever, and is dealing damage to itself to play 2/2s for 2 because back then that was a good creature. And the arms race began. I was dropping the clunky avatars and sandy grindings from my deck for whiteboard wipes and more counter magic. Creatures that died to removal were replaced by removal with my own. And it got to the point where it was a creatureless deck because Hedron Crab is dumb. It's a terrible blocker. Its Buddy Ruin Crab is also stupid and bad. And my, what were they called? Wall of Denials were getting eaten up by Edict effects. So why would I even play creatures? It just turns on everybody's removal. So to creatures. The only way I had to win was by milling via Mind Trap, Mind Funeral, or Archive Trap. Yes, thank God for Worldwake coming along and giving us manlands so that I could have another way to win. But at the time, it was all in on mill. And the beauty of Archive Trap the time is that it existed alongside the enemy fetch lands that were printed in Zendikar. And by now, everybody knows how good fetches are, but I think even at the time of Zendikar, like, people were still a little late to how good fetches were, and we were getting there. We were finally starting to understand, now that the whole cycle of all 10 of them had been printed, like how good these things are. And I think the existence of the Ravnica Shocklands really catapulted them too into notoriety. They also lead to a lot of shuffling. And even monocolor decks, like my buddy's beloved Vamps deck, ran them to smooth out the draws and for him to give Vampire Nocturnus a new look at the top card, because Nocturnus cares if the top card of your deck is black or not. Because if it is, all your Vamps get like +2/+1 in flying, and that's a big difference. So if you've got a swamp on top, you want to crack your fetch to get a different look. It also existed at the same time as Path to Exile, which also strongly encouraged your opponent to shuffle their deck. So I was positioned to be able to theoretically win on opponent's turn 1 without any land in play if I drew all 4 traps and they cracked a fetch. And that idea was chef's kiss, right? So the same also goes when you're in game 3 and you point a Path to Exile at a creature and you ask your opponent if they search. I mean, who wouldn't? That's the whole thing, right? I'm giving you a land. Go on, go take it. Oh, archive trap for you, 13 plus the one that you just took out of your deck. 26 if I have Twin Cast around, which I often did. So are you going to go get that land? Or am I just going to pay white to exile your creature with no consequences? The deck played draw go until it didn't, and you provided me the opportunity to win. It was perfectly willing to spend 2 black on Damnation to kill 1 creature, trade 1 for 1. And every game was full of decision points that were like candy to the optimizer part of my brain. Like, how many hits can I take before I need to Wrath? Do I Doomblade that now or hold up Twin Casts? It was the best. I loved it. It's such a fun deck. And it's one of my favorites ever built. It might be my favorite deck I've ever built, and it makes me smile just thinking about it. And all this time, I still identified as a spike. I had a deck that was winning local FNMs with what felt like a pretty ruthless control shell and a stupid dumb mill card that people hated and didn't know how to play against. And made people like think twice about cracking their fetches, which is delightful. And when playing FNMs against my friends' decks, which we all knew pretty well by the time, since it was a relatively small core group of like 4 to 6 people, play patterns began to emerge as we all, are positioning ourselves to adapt around each other. My Vamps friend started playing Sadistic Sacrament to go get my archive traps out of my deck. And I added Luminarch Ascensions to my sideboard to deal with opponents who didn't pressure me, but could draw me out on 1-for-1 trades. So I basically just sit there waiting to die when I can't beat these people if for whatever reason they counter a trap or something like that. So Luminarch Ascension really puts the onus on them to come and get me. And I even got to live the dream, or so dang close to it, that like it's one of my favorite core Magic memories. So I sat down for a match, FNM, against my buddy playing Vamps. We went to game 3, which wasn't uncommon for us because our decks were so tuned against each other. And game 2 was won by him off the back of a team swing and flipping the damage to lethal off of a fetch crack to shuffle and flip a black card for the Nocturnus on the board and kill me outright. And even if I had the trap at that point, I was dead to combat damage. He's never going to draw a card to mill him out anyway. And I feel like at this point I was kind of on a losing streak to him overall, but I may just be projecting that. But I definitely remember getting smashed in by these Nocturnus flips where it doesn't take that many creatures for +2/+1 and flying to be a big issue. And he had learned that you don't need that many creatures for that to be a problem for my deck, and I would be forced to wrath away boards of 2 creatures, and he's sitting with a grip of 6 cards, and he just puts more creatures down. And he also knew to sideboard out all of his removal against me in games 2 and 3. So, and Path to Exile was also people would gotten to the point where sometimes it wasn't always a free land for them, since they knew what I was trying to do. So we sat down, game 3. I was on the draw. Opening hand has 3 archive traps in it, and I had to have smirked. There's no way I didn't. Like, it's the closest I'd ever been to having 4 in hand, and like living that dream. I snap keep. Don't even remember if the rest of the hand was viable or if it was a playable hand. I just kept it and watched, hoping that this was a turn 1 fetch, crack for swamp, vampire lacerator. That's all I needed, and it was. I just put the traps on the table after he cracked the fetch and sat there. And he said, "Look at me," and he looked at me and said, "Fuck this," with uncharacteristic emotion. Stood up fast enough to bump the table, upsetting the play area, and had to take a walk around the block. And it was divine. And it's something that we both look back on fondly and and consider to be a highlight of our friendship. And I just sat there and waited. I picked the cards up that fell over and reset the libraries and sat there with my 3 traps still on the table and the obnoxious grin plastered on my face and waited for him to come back. And later he would tell me that he knew from my reaction to my opener that I had 2 traps. He just didn't expect the 3rd. And he was just done. So all this to say that I am 100% a Johnny Spells. I care way too much about the statement that any deck I'm building is trying to make that it overrides my need to win. And I love winning. Winning's the best. But I need to do it my way. And I need to do it in a manner that makes someone else think about their own deck choices and ideally realize that they were wrong. And no one ever said that was a nice person when it comes to playing Magic. And to only come to this realization far after learning about the psychographics and misclassifying myself based on the delusional idea is kind of embarrassing. But I found it useful for reframing how I interact with constructed formats. Because any deck that I build starts with a kernel, like some basic issue with the metagame landscape that I've noticed. This has been true for Standard, Commander, Timeless, Brawl, Historic, you name it. I want to answer the common threats of the format. In Timeless, that's stuff like Ragavan and Luris, Bauble Garbage, and Bowmasters. Like stuff that's pretty much unanswerable unless you are bending over backwards, twisting around to do it, and even then your answers still suck. In Historic, it's all that digital-only crap that just gives me an ulcer thinking about, which, again, unanswerable unless you counter it because it just does the thing. And in Commander and Brawl, it's the 5-color good stuff soup decks that go unpunished for their greedy mana bases. So there's some sort of innate flaw, I guess. Part of me that can't abide people getting free value. You should have to work at value. Value is earned by thinking about your deck and constructing it in a meaningful way. It shouldn't just be from jamming every non-basic possible into your deck and playing good stuff soup where everything has a cast or an ETB trigger and your cards have a novel and a half of text and win the game on the spot for you with no investment. So I set out deliberately to oppose that order. And I'm trying to not only oppose it, I want to win. And I know that I'm not playing the optimal deck. The rational side of me that gets that is put into a box during Magic and tells me in an infuriatingly calm, professorial tone that I'm not going to win as much with these rogue brews. But it doesn't matter. I build these stupid decks to satisfy my Johnnyism. And understanding that actual motivation, or that underlying motivation, has helped me as of late accept my lot in constructed formats. Like right now, I'm playing blue-white timeless Twincast Archive Trap. Well, it's not Twincast because we can't have Twincast. We have the bad versions of it, like Teach by Example and Galvanic Iteration. I know that's not a top tier deck. There are better mill decks. There are better overall decks. But it's my deck. I built it on my own, and sometimes it does the thing. And those times where it does the thing are worth so much more to me on an experience basis than climbing the rank ladder. I have a blue-black Nimrus commander deck that is not there to make friends, politic, or have fun. She's there to make sure that everyone else playing their Value Town zero interaction 4-hour-long game decks don't get to do those things. I had to streamline my goofy Teneb the Harvester commander deck from a, hey, this is an excuse to play Overgrown Estate from Apocalypse, to a much more efficient combo kill machine because the local meta doesn't allow for goof. It's all 5-color decks that get to enjoy like super value, or it's new era precons like that horrid white-red one from MKM that just, they outclass the idea of Elder Dragon Highlander. Like, they're commander decks, not EDH decks at this point. And the general attitudes of the players in my group ensure that there's not a place for taking it easy and doing a dumb thing with a bad enchantment. So I optimized. It's still my deck, and I guess it is actually a combo kill deck at that point. Sometimes this desire manifests in a helpful way too. To go back to the F&M years in college, back in the day, like I said, we got these monthly F&M promos, and sometimes these promos were really good and sought after. And there was a time during Scar's Block Standard that a very sought after card was the F&M promo. I don't remember what it was, but it was something that a lot of people wanted and was going for high value on the secondary market. So a lot of the local spikes and grinders took notice. Our F&M at the anime store was early in the evening because the owner didn't want to be there till 1 a.m. And it cost $5 to play. You got a promo for paying. Top 2 places got the monthly F&M promo, and the other 2 were distributed as door prizes. And there were really only ever about 4 to 6 of us. So if a person with a finely tuned competitive standard deck were to show up, they imagined that they had a pretty good chance of pub stomping us crummy casuals and walking out with the promo for the month, and then heading to the other store in town and competing there too. That shop was free to enter. It started later, but only the top 3 players got the promo, and it was random. And the final one was randomly assigned to the people still there by the end of the last round. So during this month with a nice promo, we started getting spikes and tryhards rating our F&M session for the promo. And this one group showed up to the first F&M of the month with these hyper-tuned infect decks that stomped the meta my friends and I had developed. Then these idiots loudly declared that we were easy pickings and that they would be back for the rest of the month to beat up on us filthy casuals so that they could collect their promos. Well, that didn't sit well with me. This is my playgroup. These are my friends. Screw those outsiders coming in and thinking that we were all easy marks. I already liked my deck's matchup against them. I was pretty sure I was on blue-white control at the time. Not Cawblade, but that was main and lane stream. But, something with a lot of removal and counter spells that is going to have a pretty good matchup against Infect. So I did some research on what beats Infect. And the deck tended to be like go tall on 1 or 2 threats, like early Glistener Elves with mutagenic growths and cheap pump spells, or the Blighted Agent that was unblockable. So, using spot removal is really effective against them. The other thing that's really effective against them is stuff like Turbo Fog, where they're spending a lot of their resources to try and combo kill you in one go, and if you fog for one card, all of their pump effects are worthless. So I could work with that. I built 3 different decks for my friends to pilot at the next FNM. One was a Turbo Fog, one was a removal dot deck with manlands to close the games, and I don't remember the final one, but it was, I don't know, maybe Burn or something. I don't know, whatever. I distinctly remember building 3 decks. So I built these decks and offered them to my friends, and like crash courses on how they worked if they wanted to run them at the next FNM. And we did. All of us ran our Infect Beater decks, and 3 of the 4 of us won our matches against those Magic Morons. They have finally figured out what was happening during round 2 of the afternoon, and had picked up their cards and left in a huff by round 3, because they were getting manhandled by decks that were super tuned to their stupid decks. And they didn't come back. We got to go back to our regular decks the next week, and we all got the promo. It was great. Being a curmudgeonly brewer actually helped everybody for once. I have all these stories, and I don't know if this is the right place for them, but I'm telling them anyway. So, like during Theros Standard, I had a blue-white heroic deck that was built on Hidden Strings and like Battle-Wise Hoplites and Phalanx Commander, something like that, the double white one, to do stupid things and win through overwhelming triggers, because Cypher is a good mechanic, and I won't stand for WotC slandering it. I'm pretty sure the deck didn't play a single rare, except maybe in the mana base, like Glacial Fortresses or something like that. And I distinctly remember the face on some spiky grinder playing blue-white Control, who just couldn't believe that their super spike $200 all rare deck was losing games to my heroic idiots. And like these sorts of interactions are why I build decks. It's about the experience. Winning is great, it heightens the experience for sure, but it's not why I'm sitting at the table. And knowing that now, or at least being able to properly frame it and articulate it in so many words, helps me accept my lot in constructed formats. I know that I'm not going to win as many games as possible if I were playing one of the top decks. I have to have come to peace with that. I want to win with my own decks, or at least go down swinging in my own stupid way. And like it's always hard getting crushed over and over again, especially on Arena, where you can rage chain game after game and spiral deeper and deeper, and I'm definitely guilty of that at times. But I just have to acknowledge that my deck's not going to be able to compete with the value of Luris, Bauble, Ragavan, Bowmasters. I just can't. I can't compete with the efficiency of an Oko on turn 3 all the time, or of Reanimates on Troll of Khazad-dûm turn 2, or Show and Tell combo. I can try, and I'm certainly going to fight against those currents. And my whole thing is that I don't want to be a free win. I want them to sweat it out. I want them to have to think about how to make their deck work in a slightly different way to attack me on a different axis. Like, I'm not playing creatures. So do you take out all of your removal? Or rather, the only creature I'm playing is Snapcaster Mage. So do you take out your removal? Or do you leave it in because Snapcaster Mage might start chipping in for damage? Maybe I took Snapcaster Mage out when I sideboarded, because I only play best of 3. Again, best of 1 is a trash pit. So when I do spike a win off of a Tasha's Hideous Laughter taught by example, or a galvanically iterated archive trap, well then I guess everybody wins. Except for, the people who didn't because they tried to draw a card and died. So yeah, I don't know, that's just a big Magic rant and ramble about how I learned to accept my nature as a Johnny, not combo player, but a person who is playing Magic for the experience of it and the expressive part of it, not the part to win. So I hope that that was at least an entertaining thing to listen to. Thank you so much for watching and listening. And maybe you learned something about the psychographics of Magic, or you enjoyed the story time, or whatever. If this is something you'd like me to do more of in the future, let me know in the comments or with likes or whatever's. Feed the algorithm, all that jazz. That's going to do it for me today. More Magic videos eventually once Thunder Junction isn't the main draft set anymore. I think Modern Horizons will be on Arena, so we've got that to look forward to. But yeah, that'll do it for me. Take care, everybody, and thank you for watching. I'll catch you next time.